Sorry, Don.
Turn my microphone on. Welcome, one and all. We're here to discuss RM94, and the way we're going to proceed on this is we're going to start with our advisory staff. That would, of course, be John Borkowski, who's going to go through a fairly lengthy presentation. I'm going to rely upon Mr. Borkowski to stop at key moments so that we can entertain questions, and if there are individuals who wish to comment, we'll entertain that as well. But without further ado, and then of course at the very end of this I will read the motion for the rulemaking. So without further ado, Mr. Borkowski.
Okay, good morning, Chair Barbie and Commissioners. I'll just introduce myself as John Borkowski, the work group leader, versus the advisor. I'm the work group leader for the interconnection work group. And as such, we have submitted a petition for rulemaking. And the reason why we're all here today is that on November 14th of last year, the Commission issued Order number 91984 in PC 73 to deal with issues related to deadlines for federal renewable energy tax credits associated with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. The order from the Commission directed the Interconnection Work Group to submit to the Commission not later than 90 days from the date of the order a request for emergency rulemaking treatment, and also directed our work group to resolve any issues and consider recommendations raised in the various stakeholder party comments that were not specifically addressed in the Commission's order, but that nonetheless were referred to the Interconnection Work Group for further discussion. So with that, we've developed a petition. We've got comments from stakeholders on the petition. But first, I want to just talk about the emergency regulations process. I don't want to go through all of this, but the emergency regulations process can dramatically decrease the amount of time it takes to make the regulations effective. However, it comes with a caveat that the permanent regulations have to be submitted within 100 and effective within 180 days. So an emergency regulation is temporary until replaced by a full rulemaking. So we will be here again. But with that, you bypass a lot of the processes involving publishing in the Maryland Register and things of that nature.
Mr. Borkowski, I just had a very quick question. I was just worried that I was going to forget the question. When you come back to us, is it your expectation that the regulations that you're going to present to us are going to be the same as the emergency regulations, or are you expecting that there will be some additional changes?
Let's say I would hope that they would be more or less almost exactly the same, although you can make modifications. And certainly one of the modifications might be whether something should be made permanent or not, or if it was indeed temporary. But in this case, since the One Big Beautiful Bill Act has deadlines that expire at the end of 27, I would think that for the most part, most of the, if not all the regulations we're proposing here today would need to be effective at least through that time frame.
Okay, but is it your expectation that as work group leader, you're going to go back and make some additional changes through the work group?
Not unless it's directed from the Commission here today, or something unexpected occurs in the meantime.
Okay, so in other words, then we're done, and you'll be coming back to us for approval of permanent regulations?
Yes, I
Okay.
think we would have to do that.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Okay. With regard to the emergency regulations, we did have comments from various parties. I won't cover them all. Let them cover if they want. I do want to say that emergency rulemaking treatment is, if you read the information associated with emergency regulations process, it is something that should be used for emergencies. So we really shouldn't be putting a lot in the regulations that do not require emergency treatment. I contend that even though there are a number of items in here in these proposed regulations that weren't directly prescribed in the commission order associated with PC 73, I do contend that due to the fact that all of these regulations will help streamline and make a more efficient process, then I do think they will have a impact on the deadline. So I really do consider the fact that these regulations that we're proposing today, I feel that they are all emergency regulations, although PE in particular has objected to that. So at this point, the scope of the proposed rulemaking covers the items here. You can see that there are 23 different items. And I'll just move right into the issues covered today. There are some issues that parties attempted to bring up that weren't related to the very limited scope that we had for this proposed rulemaking, and I just included those on a separate slide. And at the end, when we get to that slide, if any of the parties object, they can have an opportunity to do that. Also, there is one item involving administrative completeness of an interconnection request that if we have time and the commission is willing, like to have some consideration of that, even though it's not part of this emergency rulemaking. So that would be at your discretion, Chair Barbie and the commissioners. Also, we had a number of the regulations proposed. As you recall, I had over 20. We had 5 different regulations for which we received no non-consensus comments. So I propose that unless the commission wants to cover these items, that we don't cover them here today. And I put them in the appendix. So one of the things I wanted to do is just give a big picture about interconnection timelines, because that's really what the focus of today's rulemaking is, what can we do to reduce interconnection timelines so we can facilitate meeting some of the deadlines in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So I split these timelines up into 3 separate timelines, but for all intents and purposes, it's just one timeline. That starts with interconnection application process. And, while some parties might think that hosting capacity and interconnection queues, as we have proposed in these regulations, aren't part of the interconnection timeline, I think you can clearly see that it is part of the timeline, because, to the extent that a developer can more efficiently make decisions about, whether and where they're going to locate a project based on the information available in hosting capacity maps or in the interconnection queues. I do think that affects timelines, so I think it's within the scope of this emergency rulemaking, although there are parties that disagree with that. The pre-application reports also, we're recommending a enhanced pre-application report that provides more information. It's a new regulation. We've always had a pre-application report, but the new pre-application report contains much more information, and it is required that the utilities, require a fee for that. But, if the developer wants to pay a fee for that more robust information to help them make a decision, then, that is on them, and there was no opposition to that. And again, all these items will help reduce the timeline for getting projects online because developers have better information to make their decisions. So then we have our standard timelines related to submitting the interconnection request and curing the application. But we did make one change in here regarding minor equipment modifications, which was directed in PC 73, and that would allow certain interconnection requests to proceed without requiring a new level, which again affects the interconnection timelines. So all the regulations that we reference here, I think, are within the scope of this emergency rulemaking. Then we have the study itself. For most projects, there's a very expedited timeline, level 1, 2, and 3. It's really only when you get into the level 4 type interconnection requests that you get into the long study timelines involving feasibility studies, impact studies, and facility studies. And then here we've made a couple of proposals too that will again cut the interconnection timelines. Just the ability of utilities to combine these studies using level 4 analysis template and the regulations we have proposed for combining these studies has the potential for reducing timelines. The invoicing within 30 days, certainly if a utility doesn't start a study until they receive payment, having prescribed invoicing timelines can help reduce timelines also. And then finally, at the end, if an interconnection request is denied for level 1, 2, or 3, we prescribed a few additional measures, which I'll get into later, for a temporary permission to operate, the ability to use volt watt. And these are new regulations, again, to help keep a project on track to meet those federal timelines. So again, want to tie in what we're doing to timelines. And finally, with the construction timelines itself, we talked about parallel construction that was prescribed in the commission order. So we basically have implemented that in the proposed regulations. We also have put in some reporting deadlines. We really want to have at least in the interconnection agreements mutually agreed upon construction start dates and commercial operation dates. There are a lot of other milestones that could be in these interconnection agreements, but we're not being prescriptive about that. But those are the two key dates. So we've got new reporting requirements in RM94 for those, and we've got regulations that require that they be in the interconnection agreements. And again, the temporary permission to operate. So with that, I know I went through that very quickly, but I just want to tie what we're doing today to the timelines as much as possible. There are a few other items that are in the proposed regs that correct some things. For instance, there's a definition of distributed energy resources that nobody objects to, that is really, something, a correction that was requested by the Distribution System Planning Group. So we're taking the opportunity to put that in just because of the fact that, it's more or less correcting something that, should be corrected. So with that, we had a number of parties filing comments, and the following slides, I'm going to go through some of the major non-consensus issues item by item. I want to point out that, that the filings were pretty long, so I paraphrased a lot, and some parties may want to add some additional color where needed. But for the most part, I tried to highlight the comments as best as I could. So the first item is the Level 4 analysis template reports. This is something that actually the work group has been working on over the past, much of the past year. We actually started this in early 25. And we had proposals from mainly from CCSA, and but supported by other parties, to try to develop a Level 4 analysis template that would streamline the interconnection reports, the study reports, and was based on the New York Assessor template. So while we didn't prescribe the exact template, because some of this would be software generated and things of that nature, we did put in the template requirements, and we got consensus for the most part among all the stakeholders on these new requirements. And at this point, PE was the only, although I don't think PE disagreed with the regulation, they did disagree that it should be part of the emergency rulemaking. So, again, I tried to tie it to the timeline, because I do think that this goes hand in hand with combining a bunch of the studies, and anything that we can do to increase efficiency can decrease timeline. So unless there are any objections or PE wants to offer further comment, I'll move on.
Any of us would PE like to make a comment?
Hi, good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name is Contasia Scott, K-I, N as in Nancy, T as in Tom, E as in Eagle, S as in Sam, H as in Harry, I-A, Scott, S-C-O-T-T. I'm here on behalf of the Potomac Edison Company. I'm joined by a few of my colleagues who are also here to serve as our subject matter experts. I won't completely rehash our written comments here, but we did make comments about whether the proposed changes are within the scope of the Commission's directive and order number 91984. We did identify, I believe, 4 sections within the proposed changes that we do believe that go beyond the scope of the Commission's order, and therefore should not be subject to emergency rulemaking treatment, and should otherwise be granted standard non-emergency rulemaking treatment, which they will eventually have to go through, as the work group leader has stated. Really here, we just want to emphasize that this commission has previously determined when emergency action was required versus when something should otherwise just go through the normal rulemaking process. They did that in response to an OPC petition, and we're just requesting that the Commission make that same determination here, that there are items within these proposed changes that should be subject to that emergency rulemaking treatment, because it really goes to the heart of the Commission's directive in that order, versus there are items that are broad and go beyond the scope of what the Commission requests. If you have some questions about the technical aspects, I do have as I said, a few of my colleagues here, but that's generally for the items we identified, that would be our position.
Questions, Commissioner Suchman?
Okay, so I understand your point about proposals that go beyond the scope. I don't think, Mr. Chairman, that is the case in this this proceeding. But to be helpful to us, it also would be useful if you have a problem with the substance of those provisions. So if you can, I mean, I think we can accept the fact that you have a problem with some of the provisions in terms of whether they're covered within the scope. But I think it would be very useful to know if you have issues with the substance of the different provisions. So do you have a problem with the substance of this proposal?
For this specific proposal, no,
Yes.
we do not have a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for PE? Thank you very much. I suppose we'll proceed. Mr. Burkowski?
Okay, minor equipment modification, this was part of the PC 73 order. I won't read the whole item, but we put a lot more clarity around minor equipment modification definition, and basically what this does in essence is allow a project to proceed without redoing it, redoing the study, etc., by accepting a minor equipment modification. Staff did provide comments, but I will note that these comments are new. They were not made during the work group, and other than that, I believe we have, we have some stakeholder comments from other parties. So I'm going to move on to, staff can have an opportunity if they wish, but I'd like to just cover all of it and then open it up.
Well, I don't see anybody standing up, so please proceed.
Yeah, the joint storage parties, which I believe were CCSA and CHESA, they advocate for a broader interpretation, and they propose some alternative text. I really feel like the regulation as proposed, and I can put it up on the screen, or if you have it in front of you, I feel like it's sufficient, but we can let them offer their opinions if needed. And 9 went further by wanting us to provide a non-binding generalized list of equipment requirements, meaning utilities would have to specify the types of equipment they use. Again, if they're here, they can expand on that. So
It seems like they are indeed here, and we do have comments. So who would like to?
And I forgot one other. So
Oh, go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but and TPE generally supports, but they have some comments too. But we'll go back.
Okay, who'd like to go first? Here we go.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Dexter Hendricks with the Coalition for Community Solar Access. Great to be here. Good to see you guys. So as John outlined, our clarification really is around making sure that battery energy storage additions are treated as a minor modification. Our position is that if the battery does not increase net system capacity, does not increase AC export capability, and does not adversely affect system safety or reliability, it should be considered a minor equipment modification and not go through a full interconnection study. Importantly, this does not eliminate utility review. utilities can still retain the ability to conduct a targeted engineering review to confirm that voltage and other sort of parameters are okay and not detrimental to the system. The goal is simply to avoid situations where a project that's already been fully studied must restart the entire interconnection process because a battery was added without changing export capability. Thanks.
Questions?
So,
Go ahead.
okay, so as it's drafted, so I'm looking at the regulations. So as it's drafted now, that would not be considered a minor modification?
It would not be, no. We suggested the proposed text on the screen currently, where we're in the particular subsection around equivalent equipment substitutions. We also added in a clause around battery energy storage, so long as it does not increase the net system capacity.
So I guess the question is, if it has really no impact on the results of a study, which is what you're saying, then should it be? I guess the question is it even a minor equipment modification? It's just a new piece of equipment that's there, but it's not really. It doesn't really relate to, let's say, it's a solar facility.
Well, it would be considered in my mind like a system modification. And as it is currently, if one were to add a battery onto a system, they'll have to go through the full interconnection review. We're just trying to, create sort of a way forward such that if a party were to want to add batteries at that point, they will be able to do so as long as they meet those prescribed parameters.
Right. So, Mr. Barkowski, is it your understanding also that if you're adding a battery to a project, that would require an additional study? Is that the?
Well, I do think that, we've tried to hone in on ratings, impedances, et cetera, and no increase in output. So from that perspective, I believe it would not require a study if there was no increase in output. But the utilities did argue this. The other part of this is being able to replace, battery modules too when they degrade and things like that. And that certainly is not the intent to have to go through another study if you're replacing a battery module. But I think that
well, that's ordinary. Ordinary maintenance and operations.
Right, and I this is the concern I have is by putting in so many exceptions, then you're going to leave out something. It's much better to have sort of broader language and a broader interpretation, and then if you run into a problem, you can just come back to us. But I'm sort of inclined to agree with Mr. Barkowski. If it doesn't impact the results from a study, then I don't think it's actually really part of the project. It's actually sort of an addition, and it doesn't require a study. But I'm just concerned about sort of adding. You keep adding more exceptions, and then the argument is, well, if you have so many exceptions, then the intention was to not include anything else that we're missing. So is that Mr. Barkowski, your sort of?
Yeah, I guess I propose the regulation is written.
Yeah.
And I feel like a utility should be able to make the determination if it's going to impact, the previous results. And I can't speak for every addition of a battery because, batteries have inverters and they have different capabilities. And I really don't know that I can say generically that adding a battery, even if it doesn't increase the output, is going to affect a previous study. But I can say that if they're just replacing a battery module, that it shouldn't have to be restudied. I think one way we can deal with this, if the commission needs more information, is accept it for now. And when we come back with the permanent regs, we can have further discussion among the work group on this. But at this point, although this has been brought up in the work group, given the limited time frame we've had to propose these regs, I have to admit we could have probably went into this in a little more detail.
Well, except that, I mean, it is an emergency, and I can tell you that I am sympathetic to your position, and, I mean, it just seems to me that it's really not a part of the project that's being studied. So to the extent it becomes an issue, you can bring it to us, and we can resolve it at that point, but I'm sort of in agreement too. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Who would like to go next? You, sir?
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Mark Bird with the Office of People's Counsel, and I just wanted to add that we would also support the regulations as proposed, and we would view the adding a storage component, particularly if it's like importing power from the grid, then that could potentially necessitate a new study.
Okay. Any questions for People's Counsel? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you
Please.
so much, Chair Barve, members of the Commission. David Murray, Director of Business Development with Turning Point Energy, also known as TPE. We support the draft regulations as written. We felt like the proposal from staff was a bit too redundant, frankly, on what we had originally drafted in the work group, and felt like the safety and reliability pieces were already captured in point A in the regulation. Another point that I'd like to make on these is, these are, we would like these to just be crystal clear on what a minor modification is, and so we wouldn't have, engineering teams sort of arguing about what might be considered material or not, given that, ultimately, if there is clarity in specifically what is a minor modification, then we can simply refer to the regulations rather than coming back to you all, and we understand that you all are a very busy commission and certainly wouldn't want to put additional burden on in the event that there's a dispute between the utility and the developer on whether a equipment change or a particular downsize is a material modification or not.
Thank you. Any question? Commissioner Linton has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually had a question on this issue for Mr. Borkowski. If there is a belief that there has been a modification, who makes that determination? Is that reserved for the utility or someone else?
Well, typically the utility will make that determination, but one of the things we haven't really talked a lot about is we did codify in these proposed regs an informal dispute resolution process involving an interconnection ombudsman that would be initially assumed by the engineering division, but we would be, looking at our experience to make a longer-term decision about this. So I think that an applicant would have the ability to challenge that either through the informal process using the ombudsman or the more formal process, which are prescribed in the regulations for dispute resolution.
Okay.
But in the end, utilities need to make the initial determination.
So process-wise, then, I guess the utility or perhaps the party one of them is going to say, hey, wait a minute, there's been a modification. Well, there's been a change. And the utility would say, we believe this is a modification. And then the process that's envisioned in the emergency regulation would take over from there.
Well, the intent is that the regulation, to David's point, be clear enough so that you can weed out those interpretations, but we can't be, way too prescriptive, which, some of the parties would like us to be more prescriptive, but, that's the purpose of the regulation is to try to let some of these projects move forward by providing clearer guidelines so that the utilities don't automatically kick it into, that it's not a minor modification. It needs to go back and be restudied. So, that's the intent is just to clarify it. But, with the backstop that we've also put in the ombudsman so that if somebody wants to challenge it, we have a less formal way of dealing with it.
Okay. All right, that's similar to other complaint resolution processes we have, so, all right, thank you.
Commissioner McLean.
Thank you, sir. In terms of clarity, Mr. Bukowski, there was a suggestion on 9, no point of interconnection change. It says facility location, yada, 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 unless minor location shifts are agreed to. And I believe the joint solar parties wanted a modest, if I read that, minor modification should be increased to a modest shift in the point of interconnection. I guess my question is, what's a minor shift and what's a modest?
I think that originally the parties wanted like a 200-foot shift or something like that. What happens is when they get out there and, they do their site surveys, they might find obstructions or something of that nature and want to move something. In general, we weren't, the regulations weren't prescriptive to the 200-foot. But the intent is to just allow for those type of, site issues that would come up, when more detailed, review is performed.
Right, so it's not, so it doesn't impact the study itself. That's kind of what we're saying is.
Right, well, yeah, it's just.
Okay, all right. And
Would you like to
Characterized
comment?
it perfectly. So, yeah, we're okay with it not being prescriptive. The language of it being minor shifts is totally sufficient.
Okay, all right.
Good, so if you find a gigantic boulder in the middle of a field, you can move around it without worry. Or move the boulder, right. Go ahead. Oh, excuse me, staff.
Good morning, DeAndre Wilson. On behalf of staff, just wanted to clarify staff's modification. Is just to, well, first of all, staff 100% and 10% supports the proposed regulations that were offered by the work group leader and the work group. Majority, if not all, of staff's recommended language changes or additions are in efforts to support what was offered. And in particular, for this particular proposed change, as far as the clarification of minor equipment modifications, we're just, staff is just suggesting, what it has suggested is basically to support support that it does not change the interconnection study. So if the suggested modification does not change the study, then staff supports the change as being a minor equipment modification. So that's just.
Thank you,
want to
Mr.
clarify
Wilson. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, thank you. Yes.
Good morning, Chair Barbe and Commissioners. Crystal Barnett on behalf of the Joint Exelon Utilities. If we support the provision as written, however, if the Commission is inclined to accept staff's proposal, we would like to add, after the engineering assumptions used in the interconnection study process, we would like to add the term of the electric system, which was removed originally and replaced by staff's. So we would like to add that back in if the Commission is inclined to accept that.
Any questions for Ms. Barnett?
No.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Barkowski, no, nothing for you, ma'am. And staff's comments weren't provided to the work group. Is that what did you say that initially?
Yeah, the staff filed an alternative set of proposed regs. The work group has not had an opportunity to discuss any of that.
All right, thank you, sir.
Go ahead, Suchman.
So, hearing staff's comments today, do you think that there is any need to make changes to this language to address their concern?
I do not. I would prefer that if the commission were to give us direction that we don't make perfect the enemy of the good.
Right.
And basically recognize that this is an emergency rulemaking that, really moves us a lot further as far as streamlining these interconnection requests. And if there are matters, that, should be considered when we issue the permanent regs, then we can consider some of these. But certainly something that hasn't brought up in the work group before. I really don't think it's fair to the other work group members to just throw it on into the rulemaking for consideration now. And that goes with all the parties, not just staff, because I think several of the parties have taken the opportunity to recommend things that have not been brought up before in the work group, and certainly some of them may be great ideas, but
Well, we still have the permanent regs to consider, so.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think, let's move on. Thank you.
All right, so am I correct in that we'll be keeping the reg as proposed here?
Yep, that's my sense of it, yeah.
Okay, here's an issue, charging, discharging review for energy storage. I know that NINDOT has prescribed more prescriptive regulations here, but the issue with energy storage, and we've had energy storage regs since 2019 that require that utilities study energy storage for its proposed use, because it's not like a regular generator. It charges, it discharges. You have to basically look at that discharging and charging profiles and consider that in your studies. NINDOT wants explicitly to state 24-hour low flow studies, et cetera. I think that I tried to recommend a midway type of item where we would just supplement our existing proposed storage definition to talk about charging and discharging, so that it was clear to the utilities that they, when they study it, they're studying charging and discharging. I really don't feel like we should be going further into 24-hour low flows, et cetera. So I'm proposing to leave the regulation as proposed, but again, NINDOT may be here to address my recommendation or our work group recommendation, and then staff had something similar.
Anyone want to comment on this item? Apparently not, so let's move on.
Okay. We had an item in the tariff section regarding invoicing, and the proposed change we heard during the PC 73 conference, a technical conference, that developers wanted more clarity on being invoiced and wanted a deadline within 30 days of a signed agreement. So we codified that, and we had some comments from TPE and PE, and I'll just say at this point, since both TPE and PE are here, I'll let them comment if they wish.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, members of the
TPE.
commission. David Murray, Turning Point Energy, once again. Just to sort of provide a step back, integrity to the queue is very important to ensure that utilities are dedicating resources to studying actual viable projects. And in our view, if a project is not paying its necessary fees to maintain its position in the queue, it should be removed in order so that the utility can prioritize its resources on actually viable projects. In the industry, we call this queue squatting, and we want to ensure that the regulations are robust so that not only is the utility invoicing us and providing us with a mechanism to pay, but those that fail to do so are removed or withdrawn from the queue. so that the utility can prioritize its resources on mature, more viable projects.
Questions for TPE? Anyone? Go ahead.
Okay, so the proposed regs do require invoicing within 30 days of a signed agreement, but what would you want in addition to that?
A mechanism to pay, as well as a backstop in the event that the developer cannot pay, that it is removed from the queue.
Okay, so you want consequences if they don't meet the.
Exactly.
Okay, and Mr. Burkowski, is there something? I mean, I'm assuming if they don't pay, that everything kind of stops.
Well, from a study perspective, I think the utility would have a right to stop a study. if they
Right,
were
right. So
getting paid.
I'm not sure that we actually need to specify in here. I mean, if you're not paying, they're not going to do a study. So you're just concerned that they're going to just stay in the queue?
And Commissioner Suchman, one of the challenges is we don't have insight on projects ahead of us in the queue, and so if a project has failed to pay and it's still showing up as remaining in the queue, we might think that there's no more hosting capacity or that our project is not viable. However, if there's a consequence where if the project is subsequently marked as withdrawn by the utility, then we understand that, okay, the project ahead of us withdrew, therefore we have a viable project.
John?
So for us, it's a transparency and visibility issue as a competitor.
John, do you have a response to that?
Yes, I know I had done something with this in the regs, and I would maybe point you all to page 32 of the regs where we have regulation 04. We did add that a small generator facility can be removed from the queue for not meeting payment milestone after the utility provides a reasonable opportunity for cure. But queue position may not be forfeited, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, if they have a dispute resolution before the commission. So I feel like we've addressed the intent of TPE's request here, where I think it's more appropriate in the queue position section to address that particular concern.
Right, and it's not, there may be a reason why payment wasn't received. And so it does seem like there's a mechanism for trying to understand what the problem is, and then to the extent that they're just not paying, then the utility will knock them out of the queue.
Right, the utility has that ability to do that for non-payment.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and the intent is to then show that as withdrawn so that there's a record of that project being withdrawn and it's not simply removed. At the wholesale market in PJM, folks were relying on screenshots of previous queues to show that there were projects ahead of them. And so by marking the withdrawn, that a project has been withdrawn by like a WD symbol, that can show that there were projects previously in there. And this is similar to what happens in the permanent program, where if a project withdraws, there's a way of denoting that such that we don't have to rely on previous queue reports to show projects.
Yeah, is there a way that, or is that already?
It's already addressed. Under the regulation M2I, we have interconnection queue status, and one of the statuses is
what
the
page is-
withdrawn,
What page is this?
page 30.
Okay.
M2I has a status of withdrawn.
Okay. Does-
So
Okay.
I feel like
So
it's
will
addressed.
does that take care of your concern?
Assuming it's promptly, that it's a result of the fees not being paid.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I get a little excited on these things, right? But
We're happy that you do. John.
yeah, no, I don't want to limit withdrawn. I mean, there may be different reasons for withdrawn. Than limiting it to just not paying fees. I don't. I think that's a little too far.
Yeah. I agree. Okay. Thank you.
PE.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Mark Suga for Potomac Edison. I, for one, couldn't sleep last night. I was so excited for this. It was supposed to be yesterday, and I'm just glad we're finally here. This should be quick.
Mr. Zuka, we really have to find something else for you to do.
We'll get there. Real quick, we just feel there's no need for this additional requirement here on the 30-day invoicing. We brought up in the work group, we're not aware of an issue at our company. I don't believe other parties had brought up any specific issues. Certainly, we expect to invoice within 30 days. We just feel like the process, the queue management process, is well outlined in the existing regs. It is supplemented with the changes elsewhere, that these changes here are just not necessary.
Questions?
Well, if,
Suchman.
other than the fact that they may not be necessary, do you have a problem with the language? I mean, are you able to, you're able to
You
meet
support
the 30-day requirement?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, unless there are any other questions, I recommend we move forward.
Okay, so, just for the record, I think we're not going to make any changes to the proposal then?
No.
Thank you. All right, so now we get to pre-application reports, and we had a number of comments on the pre-application reports, but we had actually been working on this in the work group before the PC 73 order. So we've greatly expanded the type of information that should be able to be provided to developers requesting more detailed pre-application reports. So we have your basic pre-application report with just basic information, which has already been codified for many years. But if developers want to pay for additional information, then we had some additional, requirements that the pre-application report contain. So without getting into all the details, we did have stakeholder comments. And although we did get a lot of support from the developer community, we did have uniformly disagreement between the utilities and the developer community. And I'm throwing IREC in that also, although I'm not sure that they would characterize themselves as development community. But basically, this item of adding available rated capacities was a big non-consensus item. Originally, we had it in the proposal, but the utilities indicated that they really couldn't determine that it would be useful, number one, and it would take a lot more time. And, if we're interested in having our engineers work on interconnection requests and speedily, then, trying to supply all this additional information would be very burdensome and could detract from that. So that was the major point of non-consensus here. The other, I guess, major point is turnaround for baseline reports and detailed reports. The development community wanted baseline reports within 10 days and detailed reports within 20 days, whereas the utility wanted the reports to be longer, within 20 and 30 days respectively. And 9DOT also wanted some additional information from most recent rate cases, et cetera. And PE, again, thought this regulation was outside of the order number 91984, and also disagreed with shortening the deadline. So I will yield at this point if the other stakeholders want to talk about their positions.
Yeah, does anybody want to comment on this? Yes.
Hello again, Commissioners and Chair. Dexter Hendricks, CCSA. So our position here, as John outlined, is related to including available rated capacity in these pre-application reports. From our perspective, it's critical information for developers trying to determine whether a project is technically viable before entering the queue. So for an example, to kind of illustrate how useful it is, if let's say a feeder may only have 4 megawatts of available capacity, while the substation transformer serving that feeder may have 12 megawatts available. Without access to the rated capacity information, a developer cannot distinguish between a feeder constraint and a broader system constraint, and that distinction often determines whether a project is viable. This is, again, similar to sort of many advances that John has mentioned previously, trying to ensure that the queue is more efficient and that developers have what they need to make more informed decisions about moving projects forward on the front end, which will have the knock-on effect of giving the utilities less work on speculative projects.
Questions? Anyone? Apparently not. Okay, thank you very much. PE?
Good morning again. Just a quick response. I mean, we generally don't oppose the idea of providing the information. Some of it is additional time to gather it. It doesn't all exist in the same place. And also, we've expressed a general concern that providing some of this information may, even, due to their best efforts, may mislead the developers into what's available. Sometimes it's as simple as this line has 4 megawatts of capacity available. Sometimes it's a much more complicated constraint. Such as a voltage variation constraint, or a system protection constraint that really isn't going to be able to be determined using even that level of data. So again, it's not that we oppose them having that and perhaps using that to determine, but there are times when that data may indicate a project could be available at this size, and it turns out a constraint that is different from just capacity of equipment, thermal capacity, as the gentleman was explaining, might limit the project. Our main concern on these is the timelines. So we have an existing process to do pre-application reports in 20 business days, which we complete. This moves that entire process to 10 business days. So a significant change, which would require, as you would expect, more personnel in order to make sure we get those done on time. And then also to do the much more detailed request, which is a lot of information gathering, which may come from multiple groups and multiple systems, to be done within that 20 days. Of course, we do, in our tariff, this commission approved a $300 pre-application fee for the existing report. We'd have to reconsider, that fee if that still covers the costs with an accelerated timeline. And then, of course, an additional fee for the second review. One, we think it's critical that we have the ability to get those into the tariffs and approved so we can charge them as we start to do these more detailed reviews. But also just want to, just bring up the concern that those fees are likely to go up. These are going to require, just to make sure that the costs are contained, the costs that were spent on these studies are contained to the applicants, that those fees will likely go up.
Questions? Go ahead.
So I actually would like to hear from PHI as well. I think this is from my perspective, this is among the most important pieces of information that should be out there for the project developers, from not just from their perspective, but from the system's perspective. I mean, if we're trying to ensure that the projects that are being developed are the most beneficial to the system, then we really need to know what the available capacity is, and that information has to get out. And I understand. I mean, these are emergency provisions, so we need to kind of get this moving as quickly as possible. But this kind of information should be, and I understand that PE has some constraints because you have less SCADA, but the PHI companies should be able to have that information. It should be out there, and it should be made available. You should want that information to get out to the developers, because you want the developers to work with the utility to deploy projects as that are as efficient and effective as possible to address the constraints on the system. Otherwise, they're flying blind, and we're not getting the best projects out there in the best ways to help the system, as well as to get these projects deployed.
Well, with that as a segue, PHI appears to be with us again, so go ahead, please comment.
Good morning once again, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Matthew Seegers for PHI. I'm going to bring up our subject matter expert, Mr. John Budd, who can address that in more detail than I can.
Very well. Okay. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is John Budd. I'm from Capacity Planning at PHI. I'm a principal engineer. So the rated capacity matter, I don't really consider it tied to SCADA. So I heard that brought up. It's more of like a constant rating of the equipment that we would sort of have in like a database. And we don't provide that currently, but it's something we could potentially do. We would just have to change
But
our...
it's not static. I mean, it's changing constantly, correct?
So we don't consider that to be a value that changes constantly. It's a static number that's based on a rating. It could change seasonally, so there might be a winter rating or a summer rating, but it doesn't change throughout the day, if that's what they were implying. I wasn't interpreting it as that.
Okay, so you know what your different lines are rated now.
Yes.
Okay, and is this the kind of information that you're concerned about CEII? Is that some of the reason why you're reluctant to share this information?
I mean, confidentiality? We're talking
No, the critical infrastructure.
about? Oh, I mean, to an extent, but I mean, I'm more saying we could provide that. It's just, it would be extra work for us to add it to our pre-app process. So we would just have to change and add that information to the pre-application.
Okay, but you have that information. So what you're not going to have to go out and determine the ratings.
Correct.
Okay, so that information is that can be shared. It's not. What are you talking? It's not a really heavy lift. It's just
Well, our pre-apps are automated, so we would have to go into our system and recode them and reprogram to account for this new rating. It's a new data source, so there is some work that goes into changing how an automated pre-app is generated.
okay. But ultimately, that information is going to have to go to the developer anyway, because you're going to have to be able to communicate with them whether that project can be interconnected on a particular line in terms of available capacity, correct? That information is going to have to be shared with them. It just seems to me that sharing it before they decide that they want to propose a project would be a much more efficient way of getting projects deployed. So that they know, I can't, it doesn't make sense to put my project here. We're going to put my project over here.
Yeah. So, if you're talking about hosting capacity, we share that up front. It's on our maps, on our public website. We also include that in our pre-apps already. So that is provided up front to the developer.
Okay. So it's the line rating that they're asking for.
Yes.
Okay. And explain to me how. And you don't think that information is required if you're providing them hosting capacity?
I mean, I don't think it's required. We could provide it. It's not.
Yeah, actually, I wonder if Mr. Chairman, it would be helpful maybe to have the developer come back up and explain to me why they need the line ratings in addition to hosting capacity.
Before we do that, Mr. Seegers, did you want to add anything? I got the sense that you wanted to add something.
No, I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, all right. My brain reading skills have degraded.
It's our belief that this information actually gives us more information to make these decisions. And if, as the PHI engineer is implying, they have this information already there, and they can easily just include.
Yeah, no, I understand it's going to give you more information, but explain to me why you need the information.
If, for example, we're making decisions on a particular feeder, and we're trying to understand what possibilities exist if that feeder is not viable, this will give us information to know, well, we can probably move it to a different part of the substation. Because what happens quite often with hosting capacity information doesn't have the level of granularity we can make these decisions based on that.
And the hosting capacity is not going to be enough.
It won't be enough, no. This will just be another tool in the toolkit to allow us to make much more informed siting decisions.
Okay, you're gonna have to go into a little, I mean, because you're asking for us to make a change to the regulation, you're gonna have to give me a little bit more than it's, I mean, give me an example of a situation where hosting capacity is not gonna be enough for you.
Quite frankly, I don't have one at hand currently, but what we can do when they do the formal version of the regulations, we can discuss it in the working group.
Okay,
again,
well,
guys.
and there are, I know that there are developers out, does any other
No,
developer?
let's move
Okay,
on to
let's just-
People's Council.
I think that's fine.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Yes, please.
I'm Mark Bird again, Office of People's Council. We would support that adding available rated capacity to the proposed regs. We do think that that would be a piece of additional information beyond just the hosting capacity. That would be that would improve the ability for resources to interconnect. So we would support that proposal.
Any questions for People's Council? Go ahead, Suchman.
Okay, so, but then you're gonna have to explain to me why adding line ratings is gonna get to the information that developers need to better deploy the projects, beyond just host capacity. I mean, I'm all for as much data as possible, but we don't want to get data that's not useful.
I don't know if I could get into from a deeply technical perspective, but my understanding is that hosting is that I think the available rated capacity is just a more granular information, and I might have to get back to you.
Yeah, so it just
Okay.
seems to me that maybe we go with the regulation that's drafted now, and then maybe spend a little bit more time trying to figure out if this is going to get us the kind of information that we need. I mean, I agree that as much, getting the developers as much information as they need to make the right decision is important, but we don't want to just give out information that's not useful. So, all right, thank you.
John, unless you have anything else you'd like to add to this, it looks like we are building up a little mini list of things to consider for the future, and I think this might be a nice item for that list. So the sense I get from the commission is that we want to work with this and move forward to the next batch of items.
Okay. Thank you. We'll add that to the list. So for the record, we're going to accept the regs as
Correct.
proposed and basically deal with some of the non-consensus issues in the permanent regs.
Correct.
Okay. So continuing on our favorite topic, site control. This got a lot of discussion in the work group, and I think it has some bleed over into community solar regs. In fact, both interconnection and community solar regs have site control parts to them. This regulation was an attempt, at least by the interconnection work group, to harmonize a little bit between those two different sets of regs. So we basically expanded the number of documents that require or can be used as proof of site control to include some of the documents in the community solar regs. We also would accept the notarized certification form approved by the commission. Now, one of the utility issues, with the regs now don't require a utility to verify site control, but it says may. We made that to be a shall regulation. They shall verify site control, either one of these documents or having a notarized certification form. A lot of the stakeholders agree with this, but they'd also favor a certification form without a notarization, and that could be used in lieu of some of these documents, and basically the consensus seems to be this acknowledgement of property owner consent form from New York, which we could use. I mean, I've got a copy of it here if you want to take a look at it. But in any case, I think we're pretty close on the regs. I do think that where we get into a lot of non-consensus is really not beyond the interconnection work group scope, in that how to apply these regs prospectively or retroactively, and I think it affects the community solar queue to some extent. So I'm not sure how far you want to get into this, but at this point I'll open it up for stakeholders, and we have TPE, Solar Landscape, and Joint Solar Parties, 9 all having various comments.
Thank you, Chair Barve. David Murray, TPE. And the genesis of this is in the emergency rulemaking, when the Commission removed the subscriber organization requirement as a means to enter the interconnection queue. It then opened, and it was a good change that we welcomed, but at the same time there was concern within the industry that that would lead to a rush of more speculative projects entering the interconnection queue, because all of a sudden you didn't need site control, or you didn't need to go through a 12-week commission process to suggest and affirm that you were indeed going to submit your project for interconnection. And so we found that having a site control affidavit was a nice balance to ensure that the projects that we were submitting into the interconnection queue had some level of maturity, rather than flooding the interconnection queue, which has happened in other markets. And so why we suggested that we would have a cure period for projects that entered the queue after November 14th was to ensure that there wasn't a rush of speculative interconnection projects that was sent. Any project entering the interconnection queue would either need the subscriber organization requirement or some proof of site control to ensure that it is indeed a mature project and not speculative.
So, do you have a sense of how many projects have submitted their applications after November 14th?
I can't speak for all utilities. I can say that given the rush to build projects in order to comply with federal safe harbor deadlines, as well as potential changes to the community solar program, there would be an uptick in project applications, although I'd look to the utilities to give me that number. I can say as a developer, we certainly have, and simply just over the course of doing business development.
Right, but I mean, before we decide to make a change to what has been proposed, I think it's important for us to know if there's a problem, because I don't think we need to fix something if there hasn't been a rush. So I guess, Mr. Chairman, hopefully the utilities can come up and let us know if there's been a host of projects that have been submitted post our order.
Yeah, that would be useful to know. Yes, absolutely.
Good morning, sir. Just to confirm, you're a fan of the notarized or some type of a certification, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so if I don't have any of these other documents, A through F, what is a certification going to do to stop a flood of speculative projects, sir?
So the idea is if you're unable to provide evidence from the landowner that he or she has agreed to proceed in some way with your project, then you should not maintain a position in the interconnection queue. Because in our view, that's a speculative project that should be removed.
Oh, no, I agree 100%. It just seems that the certification form is, I guess, the lowest of the low in terms of, I mean, in terms of evidence that, you've actually got a good project, that's all.
Yeah, and one of the challenges coming at it from the business side is we don't want to burden our landowners with, the driving to get a notary and sending something into the commission. Obviously, we want this to be a very easy process for them, and so we do want a relatively low bar in order to ensure that they're not burdened by our interconnection process. Given that it is a 3 to 5 year development process for these projects, we want to ensure we're not constantly pinging them for new forms or new affidavits or otherwise.
All right, thank you, sir.
Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to piggyback on Commissioner McLean's question, is this affidavit or certification filled out by the landowner or somebody else?
It's filled out by the landowner in conjunction with the developer, but yes, the landowner needs to sign off in some way.
So they would be signing off on a certification, a notarized certification that would suggest there's an intent to sign a contract or something else later?
That's correct, that they are in active discussions with either an option to lease or a potential purchase option, some form of affirmative consent that demonstrates that there is mature interest. Because otherwise, in theory, I could suggest that I'm putting solar on someone's land and lock up a space in the interconnection study queue. Meanwhile, a rival developer has actually worked with the landowner, several months later is able to sign that option to lease, but I'm ahead of them in the interconnection queue because I was able to submit for an interconnection study ahead of them, even though it's the same site.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Bukowski.
Yeah, I put on the screen what seems to be the consensus type of form that the development community prefers. Now, I can blow that up, but basically you can see, as David stated, in the end it's signed by both the property owner and the developer. And if the commission approves this reg, I would end up posting this form, or first ask you for commission approval of a similar type form for Maryland and just posting this on the commission website.
Where did you get that form from?
It's the New York form.
That's
It's
the New York
available through internet link.
Okay, that's what I thought. Any questions for Mr. Bukowski? Well, we've got this form in front of us.
And I'll just say too, one potential use cases with public lands in the event that, say, a county or a state is organizing an RFP for a particular project site. And without this form, we could, in theory, speculate on ourselves winning the RFP. Whereas if, the state or the county is able to kind of hold us back from doing that by providing this form, it would, in theory, ensure that all developers responding to a particular RFP are on the level playing field.
Okay, Hoover.
So actually that brings a question in my mind. It seems to me there's been a big effort on the part of the governor to make available state land for these types of projects. Has there been any discussion with, I guess, MDOT, I think, owns all that land. Any discussions with them about whether they have a particular process you have to go through to get site control? You may find it's a lot more complicated dealing with them as opposed to, hairy homeowner.
Was that for Mr. Sure.
Like anyone who has knowledge on this.
So you're reading my mind exactly. Yeah. So when the legislation came forward on the part of the governor, the thought was, well, let's find potential sites and then let's submit them for the interconnection queue. And that's exactly something that I want to speculate against because of the way that these projects are queued. Those of us who are, being very speculative and submitting our projects for a study before an RFP is even released, it would inherently create an uneven playing field because those who are speculative have an advantageous position in the queue relative to a company that is going through the RFP process with the MDOT or another state agency.
So who else in the state government is involved in this work group? Is it just basically MEA or?
MEA and OPC, I do think PPRP monitors it, but I don't think they've submitted any comments.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm a little concerned that, this may be something that comes up later on. Everybody has these good intentions about trying to make, more sites available and more land available, but, if we don't figure out how to incorporate them into the process, we may be back here again trying to redo stuff.
You're good for right now?
Well,
PE wants to come.
Check on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I want
Go ahead, Mark. Yeah.
So this maybe is taking a little bit of a different turn than where we thought it was going, slightly on the form. Our comment, as it states here and was in our filing, is that we're agreeable to the form as an administrative measure to make it easier. There was a concern in the work group from some of the utilities that reviewing some of these documents may be a lot, like an option. Like these may be difficult documents that a lawyer may need to review to make sure it's what we need. And I don't think that's really what we're looking for at this part of the process. So a certification that says, I have an option for a lease is what we thought this would be. It sounds like, your comment on, is this the lowest of the low? Our expectation was not this wasn't any lower than what is accepted currently. So our agreement was, we're agreeing to a form that makes it easier for everybody, as long as you're certifying you have one of the things that's in the existing regulation.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't want to. I don't accept the lowest of the low. It just seemed if you didn't have any of the other documents that, I'm doing something with. I just was trying to delve into whether or not that was actually going to avoid the speculative projects, but it sounds like it will likely do so.
So our proposal then would be, if it's not clear, that we would say that you modify it to say a notarized certification form that certifies one of the previous documents is in hand or something to that extent.
And if I can add, Delaware has a form that's like that. I didn't bring the Delaware form with me because nobody commented on the Delaware form, but several of the parties commented on the New York form preferring that. I do think that the commission, if it accepts our proposal, the form approved by the commission hasn't been approved yet. So the regulation can still go in place, and then we can work on the form and maybe merge elements of the Delaware form into this. But I really, the form's not going to be in regulation. It's just as determined by the commission. So I would again punt this to the work group.
Mm-hmm.
That's my proposal.
Okay, Commissioner Suchman.
Okay, so Mr. Zuka, do you have a sense of how many proposals you received that are in the queue since we issued our order in November of last year?
So I was actually just given that, about 90 applications. 90 larger applications. We would presume that most of them will end up being community solar. But these are applications to the interconnection queue, so we can't, be 100%
Okay,
of that.
okay. That's a sizable number.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Seegers, do you have a sense of how many are in your queue in the two companies?
Mr. Zuka, is that a significant increase
and
from what you have been seeing?
Hold on. Let's, before Mr. Seegers, go ahead and ask.
Sorry, my apologies. I just wanted, is that a significant increase in what PE has seen previously, sir?
It's typical as compared to recent, but as we mentioned in proceedings here, that is very high compared to where we were even several years ago.
Understood.
But typical, we didn't see a rush. We don't.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir.
Matthew.
Yes. For PHI, unfortunately, we don't have that number of the number of applications that came in after the commission's order, but I believe our engineering counterpart from BGE can speak generally to it.
Okay, and then can you wouldn't be able to speak generally to BGE? You can. Okay, excellent.
Okay, give us your name and welcome.
Hi, James Mirabile, Principal Engineer, BG&E, Mirabile. I'm the interconnection engineer, so the projects come in through my queue. As of November, we did get a bump in projects, probably 50% more than we had before that. Since November to present, we've probably had maybe 150 to 200 projects come through the queue.
And that's just BGE?
Just BGE, yes.
Okay, and then, do you have a sense of the PHI companies?
No, unfortunately, we don't have that information
Okay.
right now.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. John?
Okay. Well, I think that the issue of how many projects and the retroactivity is really beyond the scope of the interconnection work group and the proposed regs. I think our interest here was in just the regulation itself, and then
And you're going to go back to the work group with the form.
form, right? So that would be my proposal, and then regarding the issue of retroactivity, I would say that unless you want to rule on something now, that's doesn't need to be done for these regs.
No, I would tend to think not on that issue. So, okay, so the sense I get is that the body wants to affirm what you've done so far and move forward. And again, just for the record, to state that the form itself is not in the reg, so you're going to be working on that to the satisfaction of the parties.
Right.
Okay, can I just...
Oh, go ahead, Setchman.
So I guess my question though is for the rush after November 14th, how do we deal with the issue of site control and speculative projects? Is there a way that we can address that without I mean, I understand the concern about trying to get these regulations out and the imposition of regulations retroactively. But is there a way that the speculative projects can be managed? That's you.
Oh, I was expecting that you'd tell me.
You thought I was just that you thought this was
Yeah,
not a rhetorical question.
Where's
Mr.
Phil
Bukowski.
Vanderhayden when you need him? I really feel like that's an issue for the net energy metering work group, really, because this deals with community solar, and how you're managing that. I mean, from an interconnection standpoint, I think we were proposing that these regs be, prospective.
Yeah. No, I guess maybe I'm just sort of throwing this out as a, to the extent that this is an issue that can be managed within one of the working groups. The question of how to deal. I mean, it's a small subset because it's just really from November 14th until these regulations go into effect. How can you manage projects that are really speculative? And you don't have to answer that now, but maybe just put that out as a placeholder for discussion and consideration.
Yeah, we can address it from just how the utility's dealing with it from an interconnection standpoint.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
And maybe get a bench to the bench data request. Maybe get some more data on that.
Yeah. So why don't we do, Mr. Chair? Can we do a bench data request of a list of all projects that were submitted between November 14th of 2025 and the date that,
So-
maybe as, and to today. Does that make sense?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah, it does.
All right, thank you.
And can I add a suggestion? Maybe compare that to the previous year.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That should be pretty easy to pull down to the information.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to move on from site control, and just for the record, we're going to accept the reg as proposed and work on the issue of the form in the work group, in addition to the assignment to talk about how the utility's managing the increased workload from an interconnection perspective, in
Okay.
addition to the data request.
Okay.
Okay, so here we get into the queue issue, which we talked about before. There's a lot here, and the main point is that we've really updated significantly the information requirements that have to be in a queue. And we also, the development community would like to have the queue data in a sortable spreadsheet. There were some concerns about posting spreadsheets on websites from the utilities. So we've made it upon request, the utilities would provide that queue data in a spreadsheet, because the development community likes to be able to sort and do various analysis with the data. And just providing a PDF is not always easily transferable. There's a sunset provision that, a facility would be on the queue unless canceled or removed. And if they have a dispute, it doesn't affect queue position. Also, voluntarily, utilities may provide additional information besides what's in the queue, required information. So I won't go into that since it's too much, but it is a voluntary type of thing to provide additional information. So with that, we had MEA wanted a standardized statewide data dictionary for the queue reporting fields. We do not have that, and that comment was raised, was not raised during the work group. It was raised afterwards in the filing. And again, PE thinks that this is beyond the scope of the emergency rulemaking, and the joint storage parties, solar parties recommended a couple different things. So I guess with those parties being here, turn it over to them.
Yeah, Mr. Zuka?
Two hopefully quick things. First, on providing the queue data and sortable spreadsheet, we don't have an issue with that. Our company will not permit Excel spreadsheets on our corporate webpage. So that's why we'll have to do it upon request. A suggestion we made is that the commission staff does host some Excel sheets for utilities now. A good example is in the EV work group. We have reliability. We had the same issue. We have these big reliability spreadsheets, and we send them to staff. Staff puts them up on the webpage. Everyone can view them there. That would eliminate the need for the back and forth of requesting updates. We could just send staff that. So it's a suggestion. Obviously, if the commission is not agreeable to that, we can do the upon request. Second, this one is really a technical thing on the application date. So these proposed regulations would essentially change queue position to be based off of the date your application is determined to be administratively complete. So you apply, we have 5 days to get back to you and say, yep, we got everything. We haven't reviewed anything, we just say we have all the forms. As long as you do that, as an applicant, you stay on the day you applied for your queue position. If you apply on June 1st, it stays June 1st, even if it was June 3rd, you're administratively complete. If we're to change it so that the queue is based off of the June 3rd date, we now have to redo our systems in order to do that. Our system just says the application date is the date. So it's not necessarily that we have a huge opposition to the change. It's a difference in process in what we do today per the current regs and would require us to do some upgrades. We do feel it makes more sense to keep it as the application date because that's when you apply. As long as you meet all the requirements and are not removed for not responding in time or paying your invoice in time, you really should stay at that point. So we're suggesting that either stays to date of application or somehow we're given the flexibility to do it in a way that's different from the other utilities if that's what they need.
Oh,
Well, actually, one question about the first suggestion you made about if you don't do this by request, you send it to staff and then staff puts it up. I guess the question for staff is, my concern would be if they send this stuff to staff, if we don't have somebody primed and ready to do it, it's going to sit somewhere and not actually be on the website, and it's going to hinder the developer. So I guess I kind of want to know from staff whether they have any problem with PE's suggestion of, oh, we'll send it to you and you put it on your website.
DeAndre Wilson on behalf of staff. From my understanding, we do not have I'm not aware of the designated staff personnel who handles updating the websites. We previously had content managers amongst the division that handled that. That recently has been changed. But we have we've been consulting we've had a consultant come in to upgrade the website now. And so my assumption is that any updates will be coordinated through the staff member that worked with the consultant in order to ensure that those are updated sufficiently and timely. So that's what I have in regards to that.
Yeah, go ahead. Hold on, DeAndre.
Not for DeAndre.
Oh, not for DeAndre.
Right. Mr. Zuka, come on back. Okay. So can you tell me what significant system upgrades means? I mean, what are we talking about in terms of dollars?
Great question. I do not have any dollars. I will say Potomac Edison does utilize a system that was developed in-house at First Energy. It's utilized by all of our companies. So we can make modifications, but again, it's just, we'd have to, to change that. I can get back to you on what that is, but I don't know that we'll have a specific dollar amount.
Right. I mean, Mr. Borkowski, I'm assuming it's having the same process in place throughout Maryland just makes it easier for developers so that they know what it means when you're applying to be in the queue. Having a different determination of queue position in PE service territory means that the developers are going to have to know that. I'm assuming that's why you would want it to be the same everywhere.
Yeah, just for consistency, and the point is that Exelon's practices are different than PE's, so, in the end, the regulation reflects, to some extent, the Exelon practice.
Right. I guess the concern I have is, I mean, if we're talking about, hundreds of thousands of dollars to make changes to the system, that's something that we probably should know about. So do you have a?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're clear that we feel like this is a change in the way we're required to do this. That the way we've been doing it today is what we believe is required. For example, when the community solar program started, we're required to review applications in the order in which they're received. That's a general requirement of all these. And so in order to keep the integrity for that process, we make sure that we mark everything. It's like a stamp. It's a digital stamp of whenever it comes in, and that's your queue position. We feel like that's required to meet the regulations today, and this would require a change in the way we do our process.
Okay, and that is the case, is that they will have to make a change to the way that they determine queue positions?
I believe so, and unless they were to submit a waiver request, which they could do too, and you might find good cause if it were exorbitantly expensive or time consuming, and I mean, they would need some time to implement this too, so they might need a waiver just from a time perspective.
Okay. You heard that.
Mr. Borkowski, I mean, since we're coming back and these are just emergency regs and we're going to have to fix everything in 6 months, would it be advisable to insert some kind of language that would satisfy PE? Just at least on a temporary basis until we get this figured out.
Does PE have a suggestion that to modify the language so that we can,
Mark?
I believe so. So in the regulations, it has date, application was determined to be administratively complete. And I believe our suggestion was change that to date of application.
But that would change it for the Exelon utilities. So you just,
But then you could add as determined by the utility. And that gives a little bit of.
Right, or if there's an or, that either one.
Sure.
And I
Yeah.
can't speak for the Exelon
Yeah.
utilities. I don't know for certain that this does, that either way would cause them an issue.
On a temporary basis.
Yeah.
right.
I don't like doing things on the fly, but that probably is the way,
Yeah,
the way
no,
forward.
right, because the last thing we want is for you to be incurring a lot of money for a small change.
I also don't think this
Right.
is a very big change. We're talking usually a couple days difference, and it doesn't usually change the order. It's
Okay.
just the way that.
So where's the
right.
language in the
I'm going to make a
regulations?
proposal. It's on page 30. M2H, and my proposal is to change it from date interconnection request deemed complete or date interconnection request received. Very simple change.
Okay,
That works.
that's fine.
That works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, so
Oh, go
As-
ahead.
well,
I'm sorry.
but it's got to be as determined by the utility,
We can
or
do that.
as okay, because then it just creates confusion.
So I would like to take how much more work do we have? I think I'd like to take a break for lunch imminently. So,
yeah, looking at this, I do think we've hit a lot of the big ones, but we probably, we've been at this almost 2 hours, probably got another hour and a half left with this.
really, that's it?
Yeah.
Well, at a minimum, I think we ought to take a quick break. So, what? Yeah, 2-hour lunch. No, we're not doing that.
Why don't we just come back at 1, and then we can have lunch now?
The problem is people going out to get lunch, so.
Yeah.
That's what I was told. I was
Do
doing
we care
that,
about
so.
that?
Yeah.
So you're saying how much more time? An hour or so?
I think we have an hour at least, and then it could be an hour and a half if you want to get into the
Well, we're
administrative completeness issue that's not part of this rule.
Well, we're apparently a very talkative bunch, so I'd like us to take a lunch break now and be back by 1. That work for everybody?
Okay.
We are in recess then. Okay, it'll probably take a few seconds to crank up the technical stuff. We good? Okay, great. So we are unrecessed. We're back on. So, John, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Chair Barbie. Good afternoon again, Chair Barbie and Commissioners. When we left off, we were at volt watts inverter settings, and here we just have a very minor change allowing an interconnection customer to be given an option by the utility to use a site-specific volt watt inverter setting so that they can avoid possibly needing an upgrade project. This ability has always been available. I think we're just codifying it because it's a site-specific change. Staff has recommended some different wording. However, it wasn't part of the work group discussions, and I think the existing reg is, in my opinion, sufficient. So I am just recommending
we stick with
approval, since we have consensus of the work group.
Yeah, let's stick with the consensus.
Okay, inadvertent export for energy storage, again, a very minor change. And the only reason we changed is we had something in the legacy regulations that were adopted in 2019 that restricted inadvertent energy for level 3 interconnection requests because they were by definition non-exporting systems. And what inadvertent energy is really, if you think of having like a Tesla Powerwall, and basically, it's not exporting because of the load in the house is more than enough. Suddenly, if you would lose like a large load in the house, you could get an inadvertent export, but the controls of the Powerwall would bring it back within bounds, within cycles. And so we were just making an allowance for that particular characteristic of energy storage, and staff has recommended a lot of additional regs that have not been socialized with the work group, and I would recommend that we just stick with the original regulation.
Yep, let's do that. Stick with the original work group recommendation.
Okay. I think I have staff's. I think I have that in there twice. Okay. Oh, no. Okay, yeah. A little bit confused. Limited export agreements. We codified limited export agreements last year when we had the regulations, and actually it was in December 2024 they became effective. And the utilities all have procedures on their websites for how limited export agreements are handled. However, at the time we codified them, we restricted that to level 2 and level 4 interconnection customers. So now we're just saying it can be available to all interconnection customers. And limited export agreements allow for operation where basically, you would avoid, you would limit your operations, limit your exports so that you can avoid upgrade projects. And it's especially important trying to meet these federal tax guidelines to allow limited export agreements, even temporary limited export agreements, because there are certain deadlines for when you need to begin construction and when you need to be commercially operational. So that's the purpose of the change. MEA had some clarifications to require utilities to publish clear eligibility criteria. and OPC also recommended longer-term directing the interconnection work group to pursue dynamic flexible interconnection, which would take a lot longer time for the work group to work through this. And
Are they new? Were they proposed to the work group?
the OPC recommendation, I think in the past that they have mentioned it, but it wasn't a specific regulation proposal. And, you know, my recommendation is just to deal with these issues further in the work group, although I have to say that OPC's recommendation about dynamic flexible interconnection might not be available for making these things permanent, because I think that's going to take a lot longer discussion. I am not aware of, you know, what other states are doing, but I think this is like cutting edge. And it's going to take a lot longer time for us to do. I think if we wanted to do it right, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it does look interesting, but I definitely would want to put a lot of thought behind
Right,
it.
and Mr. Chairman, I actually attended something recently where they sort of acknowledged that the flexible interconnection issue is very cutting edge. So I think we need to be careful
Oh,
about
I mean, we do.
doing anything cutting edge in emergency regulations.
Yeah, but I mean, I'll say this. I mean, this is where we have to end up going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Burkowski, this is something that will be housed somewhere, because you know, flexible interconnection seems to be a very useful tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, and we do have current regulations. What I think the stakeholders would like is more specificity. For instance, you know, there are certain standards out there for power controllers and things like that that people would like to explore, and you know, our regulations are more or less about intent and allowing utilities to have the freedom to implement them, you know, based on their current engineering practices and abilities. But I think there's a desire among the stakeholders to have more standardization and more reference or incorporation of national standards with regards to you know, how we're basically implementing some of these you know, control mechanisms for limited export agreements. And
Okay.
I just think that's very technical. It's going to take us a while.
Yep. Okay. We'll stick with the work group.
Okay.
But I mean, to underscore what Commissioner Suchman and I said, that this is, you know, just to park in the back of our minds, this is someplace we need to go.
Yeah, but I want to be clear that we're already allowing it. So
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you know, because I did take exception to some of the stakeholder comments in the PC 73 saying we needed to do flexible interconnection. And to my knowledge, we were one of the first states to implement flexible interconnection. In fact, there was an article in the press about California being the first state, and yeah, they probably got a lot more meat on the bones on their regulations, but you know, for all intents and purposes, I think since they implemented their flexible interconnection at the beginning of 2025, and our regulations went in effect December 11th, 2024. I feel like we were first, although I would admit that California has done, you know, more standards-based work that we need to do.
I think we have the authority to recognize ourselves as first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I think if IREC were here, they could probably disagree, but because I think they were the source of the information for the press article.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But
All right.
But in any case, okay. Hosting capacity. We call it hosting capacity reporting systems instead of hosting capacity maps, only because not all the utilities in Maryland have maps. All the large utilities including Schmecco and Chop Tank have maps. Even I think Easton has maps, but we got many smaller municipalities, and we allow them to basically report hosting capacity using like spreadsheet type information. So that's why we call it reporting systems. But we wanted to expand what is in these systems, so we expanded to include circuit and feeder details, substation names, voltage levels, etc. And including hosting capacity fees, because with the implementation of MCAM, and there's several filings by the utilities now to update their tariffs for the Maryland cost allocation method. Soon we'll have hosting capacity fees available if the commission accepts their tariff filings. So we expanded the information required, and we also want to require that they be published quarterly beginning in January 27, and transitioning to monthly updates. And we did have a lot of stakeholder comments on this, mostly wanting monthly now, and or even more frequently. But we had comments from IREC, MEA, OPC is here today, PE, Solar Landscape, and the Joint Solar Party. So I guess at this point, I do think this is one of the major issues for today. I would defer to the stakeholders who provided comments if they want to.
Well, it looks like Mr. Zuka is coming forward, so maybe you should choose a seat.
Yeah, next time I'll choose a
Yeah.
closer seat, maybe
Right.
next to Mr. Wilson here. So kind of a bad news, good news for us here. The bad news is that, as we talked about in the work group, we have hosting capacity maps. Those hosting capacity maps are compliant with the current regulation. They would not be with this change. This change does add some detail on what is to be included in the maps. So if this goes in, we would need to come back in and request a temporary waiver for us to upgrade those systems. We, in theory, could update them more often. Right now, we update them annually. That we may also need a waiver as we update our process. The good news is that we are looking at upgrading the maps. We're in a process now to kind of go to a different system where the maps will be, provide more additional information, which obviously we can take this into account as we're developing those. But we think it's going. I can't give you a date today.
I was about to ask.
Yeah. I more wanted to just to alert the commission that this is something we would not be able to comply with on day one, and our intent would be to request a temporary waiver for us to get up to speed in the near future.
Okay. Linton, then Suchman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, help me to understand, is this something that could you do it manually, as opposed to having an automated process?
So our process today is fairly manual.
Oh.
So the data is compiled manually. Our engineers will determine, based off of their analysis, what the hosting capacity levels are for certain parts of the feeders, and that it does feed an automatic process to post the maps. Obviously, they're not building each segment of them. But the issue is the software we use today, for example, doesn't have, some of the stuff on the maps as would be required by these, the voltage levels, like kind of some of the details of what would be on the maps.
All right, so, Mr. Borkowski, if a company is asking us to waive an emergency regulation, that effectively leaves us at where we are. So, as the work group talked about, what do we do if there's a company that, for whatever reason, is unable to move forward with the regulation that's adopted in an emergency capacity?
No, we really haven't. I guess, the intent here, this has been brought up in numerous venues that we need hosting capacity maps updated more frequently. I can remember it being brought up even in the distribution system planning work group, not just the interconnection work group. So I don't know that our regulations should be directed towards what utilities can do, but what we want them to do, and I think it's totally appropriate that you know, if it's going to take some time, that, you know, that they may have, be able to demonstrate good cause for a waiver. But, you know, I don't think we should write the regs, you know, for what they can currently do. I think we have to we're going to have to recognize this with a lot of things we're asking utilities to do in the future. You know, we have some utilities with DERMS, some not, and, you know, we just can't write regulations that handle all scenarios. I think we write the regulations of where we want to go, and then let the parties that can't meet them, you know, submit good cause waivers. At least with a good cause waiver, the utility will have to tell you that when, give you a schedule for when they think they can be compliant, you know, which is usually something you determine. And then, you know, it's better than trying to write a reg, in my opinion, that says, okay, everybody but such and such utilities by this date, and then a different date for other utilities. I think that gets too messy. We've done that in the past, and I sometimes just think we should just write the intent and have them comply.
I agree with you on that. I guess my next question then is, if there's a need for us to, and we're kind of a couple of steps ahead of ourselves right now. We only have the emergency reg yet. We're already talking about the potential for someone to request a waiver. But if we find ourselves in that situation where we're in between emergency regulation and eventually a more final regulation, if there's a company that needs a waiver, does that put us in a situation where we've not adhered to some of the other requirements we put in our order or another statute?
Commissioner Linton, I'm not aware of any statute requirements here, but as far as what's in the other order, I think that the order just, I'd have to go back. Actually, I have it here. I could probably research it, but I don't know that we mandated in the order, or the commission mandated in the order, that we go monthly. I think most of the language was to consider going monthly, things of that nature. And if anybody has that order, in fact, I have it here.
I don't think we need a specific answer on this right now.
Yeah,
but I'm just trying to think through, you know, where we are at that point. If we have good cause waivers for an emergency order or an emergency regulation,
Well,
excuse me.
Well, this is only one aspect of the timeline, though, and there are other venues where developers can get the information they need. So if it's not available for PE immediately, you know, they can also request a pre-application report, which would require, you know, the data that's in here. So I don't think it's a case of, you know, if PE can't meet this, that there's not another pathway to get the data.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I think, okay. And do you have a question? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Yes, please go ahead.
So I guess following up on Commissioner Linton's line of questions, I don't want a situation where you come in and ask for a waiver expecting to follow the regulations as they exist. I mean, you know, sort of recognizing that these emergency regulations are emergency for a reason. I would want to see an explanation when the waiver comes in of what you can do to make sure that you come as close as you can to meeting the requirements of the emergency regulations without having to, you know, sort of spend hundreds of millions of dollars in changing out your system. So that's, and so hearing from Mr. Burkowski that this information is in other places is comforting, but I still want to make sure that developers have the information that they need to get these projects deployed as quickly as possible. So that's going to be my expectation when I see the waiver request come in, is that you're doing everything you can to meet the conditions, but these are the reasons why you can't meet them fully.
Yeah, we would expect that.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Okay, would you like to move on?
Okay. I'm searching for other people.
Yes,
that-
are there any other stakeholders who want to, yes?
Quick comment, just to underscore again the importance of hosting capacity maps, and actually to quickly, if I may, go back to the previous conversation that we had about the pre-application reports and the importance of them having the available rated capacity. In situations like this, where the utilities are unable to furnish hosting capacity maps in a reasonable time with reasonable granularity, like PE said, they do them annually, it would be beneficial to developers to have those pre-application reports containing the available rated capacity information, so we have that information in lieu of a hosting capacity map.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay, so
We'll stick with the work group.
Okay, great.
And please move on.
All right, MCAM, this is the Maryland cost allocation method, and there were some items about in the order about clustering projects. We already allow projects to be clustered, so we decided as a work group not to do anything, to give MCAM a chance to work. And again, the tariff filings, have been filed, and they're, to my knowledge, scheduled for next week's admin hearing unless they're pushed off again. So we're not recommending any changes. MEA did have a recommendation about requiring utilities to quantify expected ratepayer benefits, reporting right-sizing assumptions and things like that. These have not, MEA's recommendations have not been discussed in the work group. So, I'd like to just move on with no change, and the work group can further consider MEA's
Yep.
recommendation.
I think we agree with that, and I don't see MEA, so.
Okay. All right. One of the most significant things that we've done, and this wasn't particularly addressed in the order, but I think it was brought to our attention how some other states are handling the expiration of the federal tax guidelines. In fact, District of Columbia is doing this also, and so we decided to implement a temporary permission to operate provision, which allows just to get these projects online before the December of 2027 expiration. They can go online in a temporary mode. They're not allowed to maybe export, or they can operate under a temporary limited export agreement until such time as they're able to get the upgrades and things like that that they would need to have full commercial operation. So that's the purpose of the regulation. And on this, we had comments from PE and Solar Landscape and the joint storage parties. So I guess with that, I'll turn it over if any of those stakeholders are here that want to elaborate.
Yeah, would anybody like to comment on this?
I can just ask.
Would you have a comment for?
Mr. Burkowski.
Yeah, okay, well, let's first do a question. Go ahead, Bonnie.
Yeah, just to clarify, has the Treasury Department spoken to this permission to operate notice and said that that's sufficient to satisfy the requirements for tax credit? I mean, I just want to make sure that we're not just following what another state has done, but not have the Treasury Department speaking to it at some point. Do we know?
No, I don't know that that's ever been brought to the Treasury Department. I guess sometimes if you
don't want the answer, you don't answer
it'll
the question.
it'll be there. It's always sort of, if we
Yeah,
had
but,
a letter ruling of some kind.
I am comforted a little bit that, the one group that's not here today, that IREC, which works across all the states,
Yeah.
is the one sort of cataloging the states are doing this, and they've actually even highlighted that, I think in one of their publications recently, or one of their notices, that this was being done, and they may have highlighted what DC was doing. In fact, I think it was DC. So I feel a little bit of comfort in the fact that it's not just Maryland going alone on this, but to your specific question about Treasury Department, I can't
Okay.
answer that.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Zuka.
Absolutely. So our concern on this is really a technical one. So this would allow for a shorter timeline for a temporary PTO to be issued. And the concern is that we still will need to study every generator that operates in parallel with our system. Whether it exports or not, it still needs to go through that study process. So I think some of the discussion was, well, we'll set it in non-exporting mode, therefore there's no concern to the utility, and then once they do their review, we can let it export. But as we understand that, that's non-export at the point of interconnection, meaning for that whole customer. So that solar facility will be outputting, it just may not push back at the point of the meter. We still need to complete our study before that's able to happen. So we don't necessarily have an issue if there's a temporary PTO while we're building an upgrade, for example. So for like a large community solar facility, we may need to upgrade a line and it might take a while. But if we have the opportunity to let them operate at a lower capacity while that's being built, that's something we've considered today, and it's something that we think is reasonable. Where we don't think is reasonable is to allow it to go forward in a non-exporting mode to give a temporary PTO before we have the opportunity to even complete the study to determine what may be necessary. So that's where our suggestion was, not to shorten the timelines, but still potentially allow the temporary PTO.
Yeah, John. would you
Yeah,
like
I'd like to address that. I put the chart back up of the study timelines. As you can see, we don't want to shortcut the studies. The temporary PTO on the last row is only considered at the conclusion of a study. And again, if you go to the next slide, it's only put in place to allow you to meet a commercial operation date in advance of the temporary deadline. Now, some parties have recommended that this be a permanent feature of our regs. I think, we really haven't gone down that road to have a fuller discussion about this, that particular item. But to me, I think it recognizes that utilities need to do their studies. And we just implement this. It's mainly to meet that commercial operation date, because if they, the way I understand the regs, that's the ultimate, or the federal tax guidelines, is that's, there's two deadlines. One is July 5th, I believe, and the final one is, I believe, in December of 2027, and this will allow the projects to meet that December 2027 deadline.
Commissioner Suchman.
Yeah, just a very quick question. So the date that the project receives this permission to operate notice, has anything changed for the project? I mean, at that moment, it's gonna be in the same position that it was the day before it received the notice.
Right.
So nothing's really changed.
Right. They're still proceeding to do their permanent project. It's just recognizing the fact that, for instance, a utility upgrade might not be completed in time, and allowing them to basically operate with no export until such time as that's completed, just to meet the
Right, but they're not really operating in the
Well-
sense that there's, I guess my question is, has anything physically changed? I mean, Mr. Zuka's concerned that there's going to be some ability to, so nothing's changed. Everything's going to be the same. This is just a construct so that they can get their tax credit. That's it. As much as I understand this.
And that's the way I understand it.
If that's the case, but I believe it says that they would have the ability to operate in non-export mode, and to us that means non-export at the point of interconnection. That generator may still be operating.
I think it's intended to mean that they're not exporting, they're not operating, except for purposes of the Treasury Department, so they can get their tax credit.
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't have a technical concern if that's the case. I would be confused as to what exactly we're giving permission to operate, though.
You're giving it for purposes of them getting their tax credit.
Would you be agreeable to a different form with different wording from the utility?
I mean, it would be to everybody's benefit if we didn't have to be in this position, but we're there.
Would you be happy if we just put it in quotes?
There we go. Operate.
I haven't read the entire Comar style manual, but I'm not sure that's allowed.
I think if I were to redo Comar, though, I would make a chart like this and make it much simpler, and just, because I have to admit, through the years, these regs were first implemented in 2008, and they've been patched and patched and patched, and I think we need a total different way of dealing with them because it's very confusing.
Well, we should redo all of that after I've retired.
Or,
Certainly after John retires.
yeah, all right.
Yeah, DeAndre.
Thank you, DeAndre, on behalf of staff. First, I just want to take this opportunity to clarify some things. Staff confirms that the proposed comments and modification it has proposed were not presented to the work group, before the work group, as the work group leader has stated. After further review of the proposed language, staff identified these areas that it wanted to bring for consideration. So that's where the staff's comments come from. But staff will also like to point out that staff is tasked with ensuring safe and reliable interconnection or operation of the distribution system, which is not up for debate in a work group. So again, we 100%, 110% support all of the regulations or proposed language that the work group leader and the work group has presented. We definitely understand the hard work that has gone behind it. So to that extent, I think the question is if what staff is proposing is redundant or if it is going to hinder the timely expediting of interconnection timelines. In that case, if that proves to be so, staff will very much accommodate and withdraw its comments, but we would also, to some extent, like those to be considered or parked until further consideration by the work group prior to us returning after these emergency language or revisions or Comar regulations have been presented. Just on the subject of TPO, for instance, staff offered, and again, staff's comments that we have offered, we do not see them as changing the policy framework that the work group has presented. Again, we support that. What we have offered, the intent is to support what the work group has presented and to provide some safeguards or guardrails around potential reliability issues that may come up. For instance, for the parallel construction provisions, which includes the temporary TPO, staff has offered for consideration language that for the purpose of not allowing the project to prematurely construct prior to getting a TPO, to the finalization of the PTO. We're not against parallel construction. We definitely, this was something which was evident in staff's comments in PC 73. A lot, if not all, of these proposed language or revisions that the work group has offered are things that we supported in our comments in PC 73. But these are just what we have proposed, and just to correctly characterize them, are language that we've added to the existing proposed language to better clarify what the intent is for the regulation, or our attempt at trying to clarify it. We're not modifying the policy framework that has been offered. We're not asking for the utilities to go outside of what they've already been doing. We're just adding language to help provide guardrails around such of the implementation of these new emergency regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, that's fair. Okay, please.
Are there any other comments on TPOs? TPTOs, okay. All right, next with interconnection study fees. Since we're combining studies, and we had already been working on this, it is included in our regulation proposal. We are basically saying a utility may require a study fee of 100% of estimated non-binding good faith study costs. Now, if a utility decides, I think on the next slide I might be talking about combining the studies. If they're combining studies, it's still 100% of the estimated non-binding good faith study cost. And at the end, there's a reconciliation, so we're making ratepayers whole. We really did get a lot of consensus on that, even between the developers and the utilities. So I do note that PE had a supporting comment here, and I think that's it. I don't think there's really any discussion.
Okay. Let's
Okay.
move on. Yep.
All right, failures to meet construction start dates or commercial operation dates. We basically want to make sure that we're documenting changes to construction dates and commercial operation dates, and measuring them should they fail to be met. In fact, we have an interconnection reporting requirement. We're only requiring the utilities to report a deadline is not met if they did not meet it, for reasons of the utility not reporting, non-compliance to an interconnection agreement for, a developer, because it's really on them if they're missing their own deadlines. So that's basically the thrust of the recommendation. And TP had a comment recommending adding all the construction, a lot more construction schedule to the interconnection agreement. I do think that utilities do some of that, but for our purposes, we were focused on just those two dates in the regs.
I believe TP would like to comment.
Thank you, Chair Barve, and David Murray with Turning Point Energy. And we have a similar comment kind of embedded in other pieces here, but the general ask is to ensure that not only are there milestones on the part of the developer, but also the utility too. So in the process of negotiating an interconnection agreement, there are milestones by which the utility is expected to meet, for instance, design, procurement, and construction. Therefore, there isn't kind of one end-all be-all deadline, and I think if 10 a.m. feels like a long time ago, but I think the case from this morning demonstrates the challenges of when a utility fails to meet the interconnection construction deadline, because you can have a project that's not being constructed in concert with the utility, and therefore the project sort of sits on its hands while the utility is still in the procurement or design phases.
Okay. Any questions for? Okay. Nope. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want one short rebuttal on that. Although I can agree with David that and TPE that there's not a lot of specificity on what those milestones should be. I mean, the existing regulation really just leaves it at milestones. We don't say what milestones other than these two that I'm mentioning. And the bottom line is the reg does say mutually agreed. So I do think that there's some responsibility for the developer not to sign an agreement if if they don't like the fact that there's not specificity. And I realize that they want to sign the agreement because they want to get on with their project, but I do think that an interconnection agreement is between two parties, and the developer should insist that these milestones be in there rather than have them prescriptively provided in regs. I think that we can probably be too prescriptive in some ways, and if we add milestones, in some cases, utilities may think that that's the only ones that need to be in an interconnection agreement. And I don't know that we would have project by project differences between what the milestones are. So I really feel like adding that additional specificity is a little bit of a gray area.
Yeah, I think we agree with you. So let's move on to the next item.
Okay, parallel construction. It's a very minor change, but a big change, and it was directed in PC 73. We really want to have utilities not wait until a developer completes their project for them to perform construction. We want them to construct in parallel. We heard some things at the PC 73 conference, technical conference, where felt that some utilities weren't doing that. So we made this change. Staff had a recommendation, and TPE also. So I think these were the only two comments we had on it, and I'll just defer to them if they want to elaborate.
Yeah, would anybody like to, Mr. Murray?
I'll be brief here. It goes in line with the last comment that we really think parallel construction should be the default for interconnection agreements, that the expectation is that the developer and the utility are aligning construction schedules such that they meet completion at the same time. And so we believe the language below would really clarify that.
Thank you. I don't see any questions. So, yeah, let's. We agree with you. So let's move on to the next issue.
Okay. All right, so we're done. Could be good, unless you want to delve into some of these other comments. MEA made a few comments. Staff made a few comments that were really beyond the scope, and we can consider that in future. Oh, my battery's running low, but so we have to end soon.
I assume you're referring to the battery of your laptop, not to yourself.
Yes,
Frequently, my personal battery runs pretty low. So
the joint storage parties did mention scoping meetings, and to some extent, I do think that this is probably something that would be good to raise in the permanent rulemaking, but it really wasn't raised in these discussions, so that's why I threw it into the last slide. But I do think that this can be remanded back to the work group, and we can look at it when we promulgate the permanent regs.
Do you need us to remand it, or you will just take it back?
I will just take it back.
Okay.
I'm not objecting to it unless the joint storage parties disagree with that. And that's the way I would propose handling it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any wrap-up questions for any?
Well, there's this one item. Do you want to consider this
Uh-huh.
today or not? I'll briefly explain it, and you can make a decision. Because this has been one of the most contentious issues in the work group. It's a matter of interpretation. I'm characterizing it as administrative completeness issue, and it has been raised in the energy storage proceeding also. I'm just going to characterize it. Utilities don't want to study what they consider to be speculative projects. In fact, we heard today that developers don't want to study the utilities studying those projects either. However, in some cases, especially with energy storage, since there's no tariff yet, we've heard talk about walk-up tariffs. There's no general tariff. There's at this point. If a developer obtains site control and they want to put in an interconnection request, they may not have a buyer or a tariff at the time they're submitting the interconnection request. And they would like to proceed and have the project studied, regardless, and then identify, the tariff or the buyer later. I mean, a utility will study the request if they identify, like, they're going to sell into PJM markets, or if it's a combined solar plus storage project. They will do that, but they will not, for a standalone energy storage project, consider a application to be administratively complete, and therefore able to be studied and put into the queue until that tariff or buyer is identified, because to them it's speculative. Now, when I was talking, I noticed that I framed this as administrative complete, so this gets back to that site control issue with PE. Excuse me, the queue issue was to PE earlier about, do you consider something in the queue when it's administratively complete, which is the way the regs are proposed now, or when it's well, I just lost it. Luckily we're at the end, but that's the issue. So I think the parties have been very anxious about this, but it's not directly addressed in our regs, and it's up to the commission if you want to hear more about it today, or if you'd like to just rely. There have been filings in case 9715 related to this, but I'm just offering it up.
Well, go ahead if you have.
Yeah, I'd hate to rush this because this actually is a very important issue. So what would you suggest in terms of sort of next steps for this?
Well, I think the next step for this is for the energy storage work group to get the tariff in place.
Okay, because that would take care of the issue.
I think it would take care of a large part of the issue, but I think some of the developers want to get a leg up, get in the queue in anticipation of the utility RFPs for
Okay, and then
government.
So the tariff is, what's the timing on that?
The proposal, the draft framework was presented to the energy storage work group last week, and it seemed to go well, at least from my perspective. So I think we're on track to get that to you by the end of June.
Okay.
But I think to some extent it's not just that issue. It's the fact that some developers would like to get into the queue in advance of the utility RFPs for energy storage procurements, And in my mind, you know, and I can't advise you on this because I'm making an opinion here. I'll publicly advise you so that everybody knows what, you know, I do think the utilities are hard pressed right now with resources to meet all these requirements. And if we allow utilities to work on things that are so quote unquote speculative, it distracts from, you know, work that they need to do to meet all these other deadlines. So, you know, that's where my feeling is on the whole thing is I don't think that the developers are wrong in wanting to do some of this, but I do think until we have tariffs in place, you know, we could be spending utility resources studying projects that may never come to fruition.
So separate and apart from the storage work group, is there another venue that, I mean, you can continue the work? I mean, you're going to be taking the work back on for this rulemaking when you're looking at a more permanent. Is it possible to take up that issue there?
I I mean, we can recommend a regulation to this effect, a permanent regulation, but, you know, I think, and maybe we should do that, but,
Not now.
it's not gonna be in time to satisfy some of the you know, potential applicants', desires, but, you know, I think that, in the end, the difficult part about this is all the extra burden to study things that may never come to fruition. And you know, so if you want to hear from stakeholders on this, I'm sure that they may have a different spin than I do, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think we have a lot in this anyway. But it just seems to me that sort of we've heard the concerns about speculative projects in a number of different aspects of COMAR. It's clearly an issue, and it's not an issue that's going to go away anytime soon. So it could always be brought to us again.
Half of what we do is speculative on some level, isn't it?
Oh, we're getting into existential questions.
Yeah, I know.
John's really run out of a battery now.
Okay. Any other thoughts from the commission before I make the motion? In that case, I moved forward the following revised emergency regulations in accordance with today's proceedings to the Maryland Joint Committee on Administrative, Executive, and Legislative Review, the AELR Committee, for review and approval subject to any non-substantive changes necessary to conform to COMAR drafting requirements. So, we are revising the following emergency regulations. COMAR 2050-902, COMAR 2050-0905, COMAR 2050-0906, COMAR 2050-0909, 2050-0909 through 2050-0914. Can I do it that way?
Yes.
Okay, so that is the motion, and we will proceed with a roll call. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoover.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. The motion